quote, I don't know what his status is in the NFL, but I'm glad the NBA doesn't have a politician litmus test for our players. I'd like to think we encourage our players to exercise their constitutional rights. The NBA is such a global game. I think our players' exposure to different political systems among their teammates may help them appreciate our country even more and encourage their participation. Max, which approach do you like better, the NBA or the NFL?
NBA, and it's not close. And by the way, it's one of the reasons. I think also basketball is a more elegant, accessible game, particularly for countries that are already familiar with soccer. These are both, elegant and meaning they're easy to understand, they're accessible, and basketball is an improvement in every way on soccer in a way that football is kind of harder to understand, et cetera. So it's growing globally faster than football, much faster. In fact, it's the fastest growing team sport globally. And the NFL is not kind of appreciated around the world to the extent it is here. So there are various reasons for that, but I think their attitude toward the kind of individuality the players are allowed to express is part of that, Stephen A. And of course, the NFL wants to keep things the way they are, and they're going to be very conservative, not only in terms of their politics, as I mentioned the other day, their roots in West Point, it's a military game, et cetera, but also because they benefit from the status quo at the moment. They are on top. And so why do they want things to change? Why would they? They don't. But I would caution, and I also brought this up the other day, Stephen A. It's like U.S. automakers in the 70s and 80s, right? The United States was on top, Detroit was on top, and so there was, why change? Big gas guzzling cars, but Japanese and German auto manufacturers were more nimble, and they were adapting more quickly, and you turn around, you blink, and suddenly they achieve a dominant position. Just because things have always been a certain way or are a certain way doesn't mean that they're always going to be that way. And this is the issue that the monolith faces, that the behemoth faces in the NFL, or you can even look, as I mentioned, in other businesses. They benefit from the status quo. Why change? And the answer is because the world changes and you have to adapt to it. And I think the NBA is a much more progressive league, obviously, and more nimble and better suited going forward to achieve a dominant position. I think ultimately the attitude of the NFL will hurt them.
Well, first of all, you're 1,000% correct, but it's worthy of being noted that that's a very altruistic and relatively sanctimonious position to take. You and I believe that obviously the NBA has the better approach. There's no doubt about it. It's more inclusionary, it's more progressive, it's subjected to different ideals and what have you, and we all benefit, not just as a league, but as a society, globally, from the NBA's approach to things, which is why they're a greater global brand than the National Football League. But if you're a businessman, there's no doubt that the NFL has the better approach. Because if you're a businessman who happens to participate in the NFL, you want as much control as you have to facilitate as much money as you can get without endangering it being compromised. And the NBA is better at that. I'm sorry, the NFL is better at that than the NBA. Clearly, in the sport of basketball, you have individual stars who are iconic global brands, LeBron James being first and foremost amongst them. Obviously, that's not the case with Tom Brady, because no matter how great he is not the brand from a sports perspective globally that LeBron James is. But the NFL itself benefits from it because they get to control so many things. Individuals get to market themselves in the NBA. Not so easy in the National Football League. Helmets, shoulder pads, football equipment, disguising your identity, you being somewhat removed from the crowd at hand, unable to personally ingratiate yourself with that audience or needing the assistance of the NFL. That doesn't exist in the NBA. You can basically do that on your own, and that helps. In the sport of football, you need them. So essentially, they're in constant control. And then having a 10-year agreement, CBA agreement, with its Players Association, establishing course certainty, working with marketers, advertisers, and sponsors, ensuring that there's a X amount of dollars they're going to get, a hard cap to facilitate that, and all of those things that come with it. The ability to give a guy a contract, but only a portion of it is guaranteed. And even then, you can come back to them to restructure it, or cut them and waive them, etc. These are not things you can do in the National Basketball Association. So as a result, if you're an NFL owner, from a business perspective, this approach clearly works better than any of the other sports leagues. It's just not better for society as a whole, the way the National Basketball Association is.
It's worked better in recent years. There was a time where the NFL was much smaller than, say, Major League Baseball, but it's worked better in recent years. That's true. And part of that may be that it's the nature of a full contact sport with so many participants that labor costs must be controlled, that you can't offer guarantees the same way in terms of your business model. And so it lends itself toward being all about the logo and less about the personalities. I would still say that the NFL's slow movement, their inability to get with the times as quickly as, say, the NBA, and the fact that it lacks the kind of intimacy that the fans can feel with basketball players, the storylines, etc. I think the NBA going forward eclipses the NFL eventually, to say nothing of the fact that they face a huge issue in terms of post-career player health, right, compared to the NBA, certainly. So they have a number of issues, the NFL, facing them going forward that the NBA doesn't. And one of them, I do believe, is the fact that the NFL is too conservative and should be more progressive, as the NBA is.